I don't even know when everything started to go wrong. One minute, Amelia and I were happy. I mean, really happy. I still remember our wedding day. She looked incredible in her dress, and I couldn't believe I was the one who got to marry her. It was all love and excitement, the kind of stuff people post on social media to make their lives look perfect. Only we didn't have to fake it back then. But that was years ago. Things changed. I don't know if it was my job that started to eat away at us, or if it was Amelia's promotion that really kicked things off. But suddenly, we weren't talking like we used to. I work in marketing, and the job's demanding, but hers, damn, she was managing a big project at her firm, and it swallowed her whole. She started staying late, coming home exhausted, barely saying a word before she passed out. I get it, you know. Work's hard. But this was different. We stopped spending time together. Even on weekends, she'd have some work function, or she'd be out with her friends. That's when Sarah came into the picture. Sarah was this loud, flashy chick Amelia met at work. You know the type, always posting on Instagram about girls' nights and showing off their perfectly curated lives. Sarah kept dragging Amelia out, and it started pissing me off. Like we barely had time for each other anymore. And here she is, off getting drunk with her co-workers like a teenager. I started to feel like a stranger in my own house. The silences between us got longer. When we did talk, it was about nothing. Surface-level crap like, "How was your day?" As if I didn't know the answer already. Long, stressful, distant. That's how it was for both of us. I missed her, but I didn't know how to fix it. I felt her slipping away, and every time I tried to reach out, I just hit a wall. She wasn't the same, and I sure as hell wasn't either. Then there was Tom, my buddy since college, the kind of guy you grab a beer with and forget your problems for a couple of hours. Tom's been through his own fair share of relationship disasters, so he's got that whole "I told you so" attitude about him. We'd meet at this shitty little bar, and he'd joke about how Amelia was probably having too much fun at work. I'd laugh it off because that's what guys do, right? But something about the way he said it stuck with me. Could she be? No, I couldn't let myself go there. We'd been through too much together for her to pull something like that. At least, that's what I wanted to believe. The real breaking point came after this stupid argument over dinner with friends. We were supposed to meet up with a couple we'd known for years. You know, the kind of friends who you don't see for months, but pick up right where you left off. Yeah, well, Amelia forgot all about it. And I get it, people forget things, but this wasn't the first time. She was more interested in whatever was going on in her work life than our actual life together. I lost it, just snapped. Said something like, "Why do you even bother coming home if you're never here?" That's when she said it. Divorce. Like it was nothing. Just dropped the word like it was a casual suggestion, as if we were talking about what to have for dinner. "Maybe we should just end it," she said, looking at me with this cold, distant expression, like she'd already made up her mind. And let me tell you, that word divorce hit me like a truck. We'd had our arguments before, but this was different. This was the first time she actually hinted that she was done. It messed me up bad. That night, after the argument, I couldn't sleep. I was replaying everything in my head, thinking about where the hell we went wrong. I suggested couples therapy, and honestly, I don't know if I believed it would help, but I had to try something. I couldn't just let her walk away without a fight. So, we booked an appointment with Dr. Philip Ryder, this well-known couples therapist who was supposed to be the best. I hope you could help us figure it all out, maybe get us back to where we used to be. God, how naive I was back then. When Amelia agreed to therapy, I thought maybe, just maybe, we were going to turn things around. Couples therapy was supposed to be the thing that saved us, right? That's what people say. They go to therapy, talk about their feelings, and everything somehow gets better. So we went to see Dr. Philip Ryder, the so-called expert who came highly recommended. The first session wasn't terrible, I guess. We laid out our problems, the same ones we'd been avoiding for months. The lack of communication, the constant stress from work, and that goddamn wall between us. But then, Philip hit me with something that didn't sit right. After just one session, he suggested we do some individual therapy, as if somehow seeing us separately was going to fix the mess we were in. I mean, how the hell was splitting us up going to help? Amelia agreed without even hesitating, which made me feel uneasy right from the start. I questioned it, of course, but Philip assured me it was normal. "You both need to work on yourselves before you can work on each other," he said, with this calm, professional tone like he had all the answers. Reluctantly, I agreed. What choice did I have? I was hanging on to whatever slim chance I thought we had of saving this sinking ship of a marriage. But things didn't get better. If anything, they got worse. Amelia was changing right in front of me, and not in a good way. She became more secretive, more distant. It's like she was living two lives, the one she had with me at home, which barely existed at that point, and the one she had somewhere else. I didn't know where. And the worst part? She stopped sharing things with me. She used to tell me everything, even the stupid stuff, like the drama at work or what Sarah had done on their girls' nights out. Now, radio silence. Instead, her social media was full of pictures with her friends, going out for drinks, laughing, having a good time. But none of those good times included me. And it wasn't like we were spending any more time together. If anything, she was home less and less. I'd ask her about her day, about work, and she'd just shrug me off. "It was fine," she'd say, or same old, same old. That was it. I wasn't even worth a proper conversation anymore. Then came the first real red flag. It was a receipt I found in her purse. An expensive one, from some fancy restaurant I'd never even heard of. It wasn't the kind of place Amelia and I ever went to. In fact, we hadn't gone out to a nice dinner in months. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off like it was no big deal. "Just a work dinner," she said, like I was some idiot who wouldn't think twice about it. But my gut was telling me something else. Mark. That name started to pop into my head. I knew he was her colleague, and they worked closely on this big project she was managing. I didn't like the guy, even though I'd never met him. He was always mentioned in passing, never too much detail, which only made me more suspicious. The thought of her spending more time with him than with me started gnawing at me. So yeah, I did something I'm not proud of. I installed a tracking app on her phone. I mean, what else was I supposed to do? It's not like she was giving me any reason to trust her. I figured if she wasn't going to be honest with me, I'd find the truth myself. But the app didn't show me anything. No strange locations, no unusual late-night visits anywhere suspicious. Yet, the lack of proof only made me more paranoid. I could feel it in my bones. Something wasn't right. The real kicker came when we went to another therapy session. I thought maybe things would be different this time, that maybe Philip would help us communicate better or at least make Amelia open up a little. But it was a disaster before it even started. We were both on edge that day. The car ride over was quiet, but not the comfortable kind. It was the kind of silence where you can feel every word hanging in the air, just waiting to explode. When we pulled up outside Philip's office, I don't even remember what set it off, but we started fighting right there in the parking lot. Probably something stupid like always. Maybe I questioned her about another late night at work, or maybe she was annoyed I'd been distant. Who the hell knows? But before we even got out of the car, it escalated. "You think everything's my fault, don't you?" She snapped at me, her voice sharp and cold. "You never look at yourself, do you?" I stared at her, feeling the frustration boil over. How the hell am I supposed to look at myself when you don't even give me a chance to fix anything? You're always gone, Amelia. Always. And when you are home, it's like you're not even here. Oh, so now I'm the one who's never here? Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with your work, we'd have something to talk about, she shot back, her face twisted with anger. I couldn't help but laugh, but it wasn't because anything was funny. That's rich coming from you. You're never home, always out with Sarah, or working late. What the hell are you really doing, Amelia? She glared at me, her eyes cold, and for a second I thought she was going to say something big, something that would blow everything wide open. But she didn't. Instead, she just shook her head, climbed out of the car, and slammed the door shut. We didn't even make it inside the building. I just sat there for a few minutes, watching her storm off like she was done with me, done with us. That's when I knew, deep down, that I couldn't trust her anymore. Something was seriously wrong, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something big. The tension between us only grew after that. Every little thing she did, every phone call she made, every night she came home late, I was on edge. My mind wouldn't stop racing, constantly trying to piece together what was happening behind my back. And Amelia? She just drifted further away, like she was already halfway out the door. You know that feeling when something's eating at you, but no matter how hard you try, you can't get it out of your head? That's how I was living for weeks, maybe months. After I installed that tracking app on Amelia's phone, I thought it would give me answers, like some kind of magic bullet that would confirm or deny what I already suspected. But it was nothing. A whole lot of nothing. No suspicious locations. No late-night trips to unknown places. She was where she said she'd be. At work, out with friends, running errands. On the surface, it all looked fine. But it wasn't fine. The doubt was there, crawling under my skin every single day. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was up to something, especially with Mark. I didn't know the guy, never met him, but I'd heard enough about him to know that they worked closely, maybe too closely. My mind kept going to dark places. Was she laughing with him the way she used to laugh with me? Did they grab drinks after work and get too comfortable? And what about the nights she came home late, smelling like perfume and alcohol? Was she really just out with Sarah? Or was there something more going on? Every time I asked myself those questions, it felt like someone was tightening a screw in my head, driving me to the brink. I'd replay their interactions in my head, overanalyze every time she mentioned his name in passing, every text I saw pop up on her phone. The thing was, I never found anything solid. It was just the small, subtle stuff. But sometimes, that's all you need to start spiraling. I tried to keep it together, but it wasn't working. I was falling apart, and Amelia noticed. How could she not? I wasn't sleeping, wasn't eating right, and every time we were in the same room, the tension was unbearable. Even when I wasn't outright accusing her of something, the silence between us was heavy. She'd sit there scrolling through her phone, barely acknowledging my presence, and I'd sit across from her, thinking about where she'd been or who she was really texting. Then came that night. The night I decided to follow her. It wasn't planned. I didn't wake up that morning thinking I was going to become the kind of guy who stalks his wife. But I couldn't help myself. She was staying late again, working on some urgent project with Mark. I don't know what came over me, but I grabbed my keys and got in the car. I drove to her office and parked a little down the street, far enough so she wouldn't see me, but close enough that I had a clear view of the building. I sat there for over an hour, just watching. The lights in her office were still on, and I could see the occasional shadow pass by the window. I kept wondering if one of those shadows was Mark, and if so, what the hell was he doing in there with her? Eventually, I saw her. Amelia walked out, alone, heading to her car in the parking lot. I thought I was in the clear, but then, out of nowhere, she turned her head and locked eyes with me. I don't even know how she spotted me from that distance, but she did. I froze like a deer caught in headlights. For a moment, I thought about driving off, pretending it wasn't me, but it was too late. She knew. She stormed over, her face a mix of anger and disbelief. "What the hell are you doing here, Daniel?" Her voice cut through the silence like a knife. I stammered, trying to come up with some excuse, but it was pointless. She knew exactly what I was doing. I was just what? Following me? Jesus, do you hear yourself? You're stalking me now? I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but nothing came out. She didn't wait for an answer. "You really don't trust me at all, do you?" Her voice was low, but it was full of contempt. "You've been paranoid for weeks, Daniel. I can feel it. You don't believe a word I say anymore. What the hell do you think is going on? You think I'm cheating on you, don't you?" I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. She wasn't wrong, though. Of course, I thought she was cheating. It's all I could think about. Every time she left the house, every time she didn't answer her phone right away, every time she came home later than she said she would, it was all I could think about. Amelia didn't wait for me to answer. She turned around and walked to her car. "You need help," she said before getting in and driving off, leaving me standing there in the cold. feeling like the biggest fool on the planet. That argument was the beginning of the end, and we both knew it. After that, things got worse, not that I thought they could. She stopped talking to me entirely, to shut me out completely. When she was home, it was like we were ghosts living in the same space, floating past each other without a word. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't live in this constant state of doubt, but I didn't know what to do. I wasn't sleeping anymore. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, imagining all the ways she was betraying me, all the lies she was telling, and it was eating me alive. I talked to Tom about it, finally opened up to him about my suspicions. He wasn't surprised. I guess he saw it coming before I did. "Look, man," he said one night over beers, "you're driving yourself crazy. If you really want to know what's going on, you need to stop screwing around with that tracking app. Hire a professional. Get a private investigator. If there's something to find, they'll find it." I laughed at first. It sounded so extreme, like something out of a bad movie. A pie? Really? But the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. I couldn't keep living like this, constantly questioning everything, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I needed answers. So I did it. I called up a private investigator, a guy Tom recommended, named Jack. I was nervous as hell making that call, felt like I was crossing some kind of line that couldn't be uncrossed. But once it was done, there was no turning back. Jack was professional, didn't ask too many questions. He just said he'd get to work and that he'd let me know when he found something. After that, I just had to wait. It was the longest wait of my life. The day Jack called me, I felt like my stomach dropped to the floor. It had been weeks since I hired him, weeks of restless nights, my mind bouncing between what I imagined could be happening and the small part of me that hoped I was wrong. But as soon as I heard Jack's voice on the other end of the line, I knew whatever he was about to tell me wasn't good. "I've got something for you, Daniel," he said, his voice calm and measured, like he had done this 1,000 times. Maybe he had. "You might want to sit down for this." I didn't sit down. I just stood there in the kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, waiting for him to drop the bomb. "I've been following Amelia, like you asked, and I've got some footage you need to see." "Is it Mark?" I asked, feeling my chest tighten. I was so sure it was Mark. I had spent so long building up this image of Amelia sneaking around with her colleague, that smug bastard. But Jack hesitated, and that's when I knew it was worse. Way worse. "It's not Mark," he said slowly. "It's Philip. Your therapist, Dr. Philip Ryder." For a second, I didn't even register what he said. I just stood there, silent, trying to make sense of it. Philip? The guy who was supposed to be fixing my marriage? The guy who sat there, week after week, pretending to help us? "No," I muttered, shaking my head like Jack could see me. "That's not possible. It can't be. I'm sorry, Daniel. I got the footage. I'll send it over." And that's when everything started to collapse. The man I had trusted to help fix my marriage, the one person I thought could maybe save us, was the one who destroyed it from the inside. I was the one who brought Amelia to him. I was the one who practically handed my wife over to him on a silver platter, and the whole time, he was screwing her behind my back. When the footage came through, I couldn't bring myself to watch it at first. I just stared at my phone, knowing that what I was about to see would change everything. But I couldn't avoid it forever. I pressed play. The video was grainy, taken from a distance, but it was clear enough. Amelia and Philip, outside his office, locked in an embrace that quickly escalated into something worse. They didn't even care that they were out in the open, that anyone could see them. The same place I had poured my heart out in therapy sessions, where I was trying to save my marriage, was the very place they were tearing it apart. I watched the video in silence, my blood boiling with every second. By the time it ended, I was shaking. How long had this been going on? Was it from the very beginning? Was every word Philip said in those sessions just a lie to manipulate me, to keep me blind while he screwed my wife? I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something, to hurt someone. But more than anything, I wanted revenge. At first, I thought about the divorce. I'd use the footage, take it to court, and make sure I came out on top. Amelia wouldn't get a dime. She'd be left with nothing. That seemed like a good plan. Simple, effective. But the more I thought about it, the more it felt weak. I wasn't just dealing with an unfaithful wife. I was dealing with betrayal on a level that made my skin crawl. I needed more. I needed to make them both pay. Not just in court, but publicly where it would hurt the most. The idea started forming in my head slowly, like a shadow creeping in from the edges of my mind. I wasn't just going to get my revenge through some legal documents. No, I was going to destroy them both in the one place they couldn't hide from: social media. Amelia had her perfect little image to maintain, her well-curated online persona where everything looked pristine. And Philip? He had his career, his reputation as a trusted psychologist. I was going to burn it all to the ground. The more I thought about it, the more focused I became. I started gathering everything I had. The footage from Jack, the messages I'd seen on Amelia's phone, the photos from her nights out with Sarah. I knew how to play this game. I worked in marketing, after all. I knew how quickly things could spread online, how fast someone's reputation could be shattered with the right post at the right time. I wasn't going to just take them down. I was going to humiliate them, expose them for what they really were. Amelia wasn't just a cheating wife. She was a fraud, and Philip was no better. A therapist sleeping with his patient, crossing every professional boundary there was. People needed to know, and I was going to be the one to tell them. But I wasn't stupid. I knew I had to play it carefully. If I moved too fast, it could backfire. I had to make sure everything was perfect before I made my move. So I took my time collecting everything, piecing together how it would all go down. Every day, the plan became a little clearer, the details more refined. I could see the end game, and I knew exactly how I was going to get there. I wasn't just going to get even. I was going to make them regret ever crossing me. I've always believed that when you're going to do something, especially something big, you have to do it right. This was no different. I wasn't just planning a simple act of revenge. I was orchestrating their complete downfall, and I wasn't about to half-ass it. Amelia and Philip weren't just going to feel a little embarrassment. They were going to lose everything. It started with Amelia's social media accounts. I'd known her passwords for a while, back when things were still good between us, and she'd let me log in to check her stuff while she was busy. Guess she never thought to change them. Big mistake. Gaining access was easy. I spent days lurking through her profiles, reading the messages between her and her friends, seeing how she kept up this picture-perfect facade while our marriage crumbled. And there it was, all her carefully curated bullshit. Photos of her smiling with friends, captions about girl power and living her best life. If only they knew. I'd spent enough time in marketing to know how to manipulate an audience, how to craft a narrative that could take on a life of its own. And that's exactly what I did. I picked the right time, waited for a moment when she wasn't around, and wouldn't notice what was happening until it was too late. Then, with a few clicks, I uploaded the video, the one Jack had sent me of her and Philip locked in their little affair. The caption was the final touch. I have to confess, I've been hiding this for a long time. This is who I really am. It was brutal, raw, and just ambiguous enough to make it look like she had written it herself. In seconds, it was live, and the floodgates opened. Comments started rolling in immediately. People couldn't believe what they were seeing. Her friends, her colleagues, hell, even her family, they were all there, watching the woman they thought they knew get torn apart. Some were shocked, others disgusted. But the overwhelming reaction was betrayal. The perfect Amelia they had admired, envied, was gone, replaced by the real version of her, the one who was screwing around with our therapist. It didn't take long for her to notice. Amelia's phone must have blown up with notifications, because within minutes, the video was deleted. But the damage had already been done. Once something like that is out there, you can't take it back. Screenshots were already circulating, and the video had been downloaded and shared in group chats and on other platforms. I sat back, watching it all unfold, knowing there was no way she could come back from this. She tried calling me almost immediately. My phone lit up with her name over and over again. I didn't answer. What was there to say? She had her chance to be honest, to come clean, but she chose to keep lying. Now, she was paying for it. The messages came next, desperate ones. She started with the typical apologies. "Daniel, please, I can explain. It's not what it looks like." "Yeah, right." Then, when I didn't respond, she turned to anger. "You bastard. You had no right to do this. You've ruined me." Like I was the one who did this to her. Like she wasn't the one who destroyed everything first. I ignored them all. She didn't deserve a response. Every time her name popped up on my screen, I felt a sick satisfaction. This was what she deserved. This was what they both deserved. And it wasn't just Amelia. While her life was falling apart online, Tom was working his magic on the other end. We'd been talking for weeks about how to make sure Philip got what was coming to him. Tom wasn't just some guy at a bar. He was a journalist, and he had connections. When I told him about the affair, he didn't hesitate. He started digging into Philip's professional background, and it didn't take long for him to find more dirt. Turns out, Amelia wasn't the first patient Philip had crossed the line with. There were whispers of other inappropriate relationships he'd had in the past, but nothing ever stuck. Until now. Tom's article was brutal. He didn't hold back. He exposed Philip for the fraud he was, detailing not just the affair with Amelia, but his pattern of unethical behavior. And with the video of him and Amelia circulating online, there was no way Philip could deny it. The comments and shares skyrocketed, people dissecting every detail of the scandal, and soon, Philip's name was everywhere for all the wrong reasons. Within days, Philip's practice was under fire. Patients started canceling appointments. Online reviews flooded in, calling him a predator, a disgrace to his profession. The public had made up its mind. His career was finished. Amelia wasn't faring much better. Word had spread fast among her colleagues, and by the time she showed up at work, everyone already knew. She became the center of gossip, whispered about in hallways, side-eyed during meetings. Her professional reputation was in ruins, and I knew it was only a matter of time before she'd lose her job too. She kept trying to reach me, sending long, rambling texts about how sorry she was, about how we could work through this. She said she didn't mean for any of this to happen, that she still loved me, that she made a mistake. But it was all too late. I didn't care what she felt. She was only sorry because she got caught. Meanwhile, I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't the one living in fear, wondering what was going on behind my back. Now, they were the ones who couldn't sleep at night, who had to live with the consequences of their actions. And that was the best revenge I could have asked for. Filing for divorce wasn't some grand, emotional moment like in the movies. There was no big confrontation, no drawn-out, dramatic goodbye. It was just another necessary step, another move in a game that Amelia had started when she decided to betray me. I walked into my lawyer's office, handed over the evidence, the video, the messages, the screenshots, and let the legal system do the rest. The divorce process itself was surprisingly smooth, given the chaos that had led up to it. I think Amelia knew she didn't have a leg to stand on. How could she? The video alone was enough to crush her in court. Her lawyer tried to downplay it, of course, argued that it was a private matter that had no bearing on the division of assets. But my lawyer, smart guy, knew how to use it. We didn't just paint her as an unfaithful wife. We painted her as reckless, unstable, someone who had publicly humiliated herself and compromised everything we had built together. The court sided with me. I won the house, most of our savings, and anything else that mattered. Amelia was left with scraps. But it wasn't just the money or the house that made it a victory. It was watching her sit there, defeated, knowing that her affair had cost her everything. She didn't even look at me during the proceedings. Maybe she was ashamed, or maybe she just couldn't face the fact that this was how it ended. I thought that would be the last of it, that once the divorce was finalized, we'd go our separate ways, and I'd never have to deal with her again. But, of course, it wasn't that simple. A few days after the court ruling, Amelia started calling again. Not like before, where she was furious and accusing me of ruining her life. No, this time her tone was different. She was apologetic, practically begging for a chance to talk, to explain herself. She wanted to clear the air, as if somehow that would fix anything. She said she missed me, that she regretted everything, and that we could still save what we had. It was pathetic, really. A part of me almost felt sorry for her. But mostly I just felt disgusted. There was nothing left to save. The woman I had married, the woman I thought I loved, was long gone. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. I didn't respond to her calls or texts. She wasn't worth my time anymore. I'd already severed the ties in my mind long before the divorce was official. Now it was just a matter of letting the rest of my life catch up to that reality. And it did. Slowly at first, but it did. Tom had been a rock throughout the whole mess. After the article he wrote about Philip went viral, we became even closer. He'd always been the guy I could count on, but after everything, he went out of his way to make sure I was okay. We'd grab drinks, talk about anything except Amelia, and just get back to being friends. He introduced me to some new people, too, trying to pull me out of the dark cloud that had been hanging over my life for so long. That's how I met her. Her name was Emily, a friend of Tom's from work. We clicked almost immediately, but not in some overly romantic way. It was easy, comfortable. She wasn't like Amelia. She didn't try to put on some perfect front, didn't hide behind a fake persona. Emily was real, honest, and after everything I'd been through, that was all I wanted. We started spending more time together, just casually at first. But as the weeks went by, I realized I was laughing again, enjoying life in a way I hadn't in years. She wasn't a rebound or some rush replacement for what I lost. She was something else, something better. Amelia eventually stopped trying to reach out. I think she realized it was over, that I wasn't going to give her the redemption she so desperately wanted. And honestly, I didn't think about her much anymore. She had become part of a past I was finally ready to leave behind. One day, Emily and I were packing for a weekend trip. Nothing fancy, just a quick getaway to the coast. As I folded my clothes and tossed them into my suitcase, I caught myself smiling, really smiling. Not because I was escaping from something, but because I was actually looking forward to something again. That was new. Emily walked into the room, laughing at some stupid joke Tom had texted her. She sat on the edge of the bed, watching me struggle with the zipper on my suitcase. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. No ghosts from the past. No weight of betrayal hanging over me. I turned to her and said, "You ready?" She smiled back, her eyes bright. More than ready. And just like that, I knew it was time to leave it all behind. The bitterness, the anger, the betrayal. It didn't own me anymore. I had burned that part of my life down, and now I was ready to start over. We walked out the door together, closing in on everything that had come before. The road ahead? It was wide open.